The importance of black tourism. We've all been on vacation, from Bali to Brazil, France to Fiji, Seychelles to Spain. Safe to say, we all love a good getaway, especially for those who live and work in major cities. But in 2020, with the arrival of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic, tourism took a backseat for many of the biggest tourism-dependent countries. The likes of Spain, Greece, and smaller island nations like Jamaica, Cyprus, and Malta were all affected. To understand how badly the global tourism industry was hit, we have to look at the numbers. According to the World Tourism Organization, tourist arrivals across the globe declined by 73%. In actual numbers, there were 1 billion fewer travellers in 2020 compared to the previous year, 2019. The result of this was that over 100 to 120 million jobs directly related to tourism were in jeopardy. Worse still, many countries recorded massive losses in international revenue from tourism. There was a collapse of exports of travel services. This refers to the money spent by tourists within a country. The aviation and regular transport industries were also incapacitated. But finally, it appears that the world has found a way to keep the pandemic under control. This means that we could be saying our definite goodbyes to lockdowns and travel restrictions as more countries begin to open up and welcome travellers again. Travel lovers who have been forced to stay in their homes for the past months will hit the skies with a vengeance, travelling to the most exhilarating travel destinations. Oh yes, with more travel comes more vlogs, TikToks, and Instagram posts. It's great news for tourism-dependent countries, but even better news for black travel content creators. A great trend we are starting to see is the emergence of more black travel content creators, especially across Africa, such as Wode Maya, Black and Abroad, and Thobi Rose.
I started traveling at a very young age. My mom, when I did good in school, she would reward me with trips. Summer of 2006, I studied abroad and went to South Africa, University of Western Cape Law School. And it just opened my eyes because prior to traveling to South Africa in 2006, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have hashtags related to Travel Africa. You didn't have cool pictures of people in Victoria Falls, people at Chale Wote Festival or Afro-Punk or Afrochella. The idea of traveling to Africa as a millennial, a lot of people were traveling to Bahamas and Jamaica and that, but let's actually go to Africa. That's not something that was a conversation that was being held every day.
The tourism industry in Africa has been among the top earners for many countries, bringing in a collective revenue of $168 billion in 2019 alone, whilst also creating jobs for 24.6 million people in the same year. So yeah, tourism is a massive industry in the world's most important continent and the cradle of mankind, Africa. But there is still room for growth. As of 2019, the entire tourism industry in Africa contributed 7.1% of total GDP of the continent. In Europe, however, that figure stands at 9.1%, while in Southeast Asia, the tourism industry is responsible for 12.1% of the GDP of the region. Morocco is the country with the highest tourism GDP in Africa, with a record of 12.94 million arrivals in 2019 alone. This is followed by South Africa with 10.23 million arrivals.
I just was amazed at how far advanced South Africa was, how beautiful South Africa was, and how relatable South Africans were. After that, I went back to the States, telling everyone, they're lying to us. When I went on the airplane, I was the only Black person on the airplane, but they're telling us not to go, but they're going. And it's a good reason why they're telling us not to go, because now's the time for us to go. If people were flooding Africa, investing in Africa at that time, we would have been a little bit ahead of the game, because they had however long colonization lasted, they had a big head start.
Thanks to an increase in education and social media trends, this travel culture is more prevalent amongst the younger generation, as they tend to spend most of their disposable income traveling within and outside the continent. Ghana's year of return. Africans migrate around the continent more than anyone else, but one of the major catalysts of the recent spike in travel content, especially for African Americans, could be Ghana's year of return.
we have these t-shirts. I met God, she lives in Africa. And so Jadena's team had reached out to us because he supports Black businesses. And at that time, he wore the shirt during a year of return, an introduction to year of return. And our website crashed because we had many orders coming in at one time.
Initiated by Ghana's tourism sector, the West African country designated 2019 as the year of the return in commemoration of the 400 years since the first enslaved Africans arrived in Jamestown, Virginia. Ghana launched this campaign to market itself as a tourist destination while also showcasing its transatlantic trade appeal.
My mom was a very conscious person. So say, for instance, I remember at a very young age, like 6 or 7, doing reports on Marcus Garvey. My mom had the philosophy, of Marcus Garvey, Frederick Douglass, and Kwame Nkrumah. My mom had these type of books growing up. And so because she was consciously and socially aware of what was going on outside of America, that's what was taught in the household as well. And I think that the mindset of even wanting to travel and explore Africa, it was embedded at a young age.
The campaign saw multitudes of African Americans taking a spiritual pilgrimage to Ghana to trace their ancestry and mark the sad milestone in Black history. It made the country more welcoming to African Americans interested in tracing their roots.
I don't really like the term of African American too much because I feel like, say for instance, if a Chinese person is born in America, they're still Chinese. Japanese person is born in America, they're still Japanese. So in a sense, I feel like we're African, of African descent or Africans born in America. That's more of the term that I like to use because there is a disconnection, I feel, for the most part. Africans born in America are one of the few people where we don't have a direct connection to our ancestors. Everyone else can trace back and say, this is where my forefathers, this is where my grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, their line of history. This is culturally speaking what I know of. And it stops after a certain time when you think of Africans born in America as well.
Ghana also offered to legally resettle people of African descent within its borders. The year-long campaign to resettle people of African descent was designed as an incentive to returnees in the diaspora. It was implemented by waiving some visa requirements and allowing returnees the right to apply for indefinite stays. It remains the only African country to make this offer.
Like I said, I remember meeting some people from Ghana and they're like, oh, you're from New York. We thought you was going to be loud and ghetto because that's what we see on, TV. And I think we need to travel because we need to break those barriers of thinking that we're so different from one another because of the four corners of this geographical place, which was gerrymandered and it's not even a true country in its natural state. But here we are limiting ourselves from a mental standpoint. Like, I can't even connect with this person because this person is from this country or even from this state when you're talking about in the United States. And why? Why can't we look at the next person as someone who is similar to us? Let's get past the discrepancies or the differences and let's team up and start working together.
According to government agencies within Ghana, the Year of the Return campaign resulted in over 200,000 more international arrivals, taking the total number of visitors for the year to 1.5 million, while generating an estimated revenue of $1.9 billion.
We need to travel to break barriers of misunderstandings, misconceptions, and what we thought for so long in regarding to we're so different, but yet we're all the same person.
Ghana's Year of Return campaign shows how tourism can substantially impact an economy for good. Greece is yet another example of this. Greece has been on the precipice of financial ruin the last 2 decades, a situation that was ignited in part by the hosting of the 2004 Olympic Games, the global economic crisis of 2008, and the switching of its official currency to euros. As a result of this, Greece has been subject to a financial bailout from the EU. Despite the financial turmoil that Greece is experiencing, the country's tourism industry seems to be its brightest shining light. A continued surge in tourism since the 2004 Olympics, which ironically was one of the factors responsible for the country's financial fragility, has sparked a large revenue intake for the Greek economy. In 2018 alone, Greece's tourism industry recorded about $18 billion in revenue. That year, the tourism industry contributed an estimated 20.6% to the country's GDP, with a value of $44.6 billion. This implies that 1 out of every 5 euros spent in Greece comes from the travel and tourism industries. Greece remains one of the most attractive destinations in the world thanks to its array of stunning landmarks, from the deep blue waters of the Aegean Sea to its historic sites like the Delphi. The expectation is that the contribution of the country's tourism industry will continue to increase annually, helping to establish the financial stability of Greece. Like Greece, there are several countries on the African continent that can benefit from a thriving tourism industry. For Africa, the attraction for global tourists lies in the continent's numerous and diverse landscapes, as well as the rich cultural heritage within the continent. Countries like Morocco, Egypt, and South Africa have established themselves as the most popular tourist destinations in Africa. Other countries can also challenge these big three. Kenya, for example, with its vast wildlife, has a potential to grow its tourism sector even further. The Omo River region of Ethiopia could also be developed and marketed as a choice destination for tourists as well. In West Africa, Guinea is arguably one of the most beautiful countries in Africa, and as such, it is a great place for tourists looking to enjoy breathtaking landmarks. We've left articles for further reading in the description box, and while you're there, give us a like and subscribe to our channel too. So, we now know the impact of tourism on a country and its community, right? But this needs to be visualized. As mentioned earlier, there is an increase in the content being created by Black travellers, but who has put this at the forefront of their agenda? Well, we think it's Away to Africa.
So my name is Tiffany Anderson. I am the founder of Away to Africa. I am originally from Queens, New York, Jamaican lineage and heritage, and I've lived, in the States as well as in Jamaica when first launching Away to Africa. And now I am currently in Zanzibar.
Away to Africa is a US-based travel platform that was founded by Tiffany Anderson. She's a lover of travel who set up this company to create life-changing travel experiences for members of the global community.
The idea of Away to Africa was always in the back of my mind. And after about 9 years, I met a young lady and we were both getting our hair done. And we were just having an in-depth conversation about traveling to the continent. And I'm like, yeah, I have this business idea because, a couple people actually took me up on my word when I returned back, and then, I was able to curate a couple experiences. I'm like, oh, it would be perfect to create a liaison for those wanting to travel. And she's like, look, if you launch the company, I promise I'll be your first client. So it was the idea seed that was planted 10 years ago and just sitting on it. And then that one person just pushing me, and she actually signed up as our first client as well.
Thanks to a global network of resourceful relationships, Away to Africa has curated trips to destinations like Ghana, South Africa, and Tanzania. The team is looking to expand and explore even more African countries.
If you want to reap what you sow, you have to take a big risk. If you don't take the risk, how do you expect the reward? Of course, I was frightened because you have to go in and kill your food to eat, when you're an entrepreneur. At that time, I was working in law and real estate, but I was working in business development. So I was working with very small companies and then growing them out into big multi-million-dollar companies. And I was doing it for other people without blinking twice. But that's because I knew every Friday I would have that check inside my bank. So to think, can I do as an entrepreneur, can I really invest in myself? Do I have enough faith in myself to know if I can go and fetch and get for other people, can I do it for myself? And not only for myself, to pay team members also, because you're only as strong as your team. So if you, hire people, it's not only yourself depending on, what you have to do, but it's also, having to take care of others. Actually, now we're preparing for our first round of raising funds. So everything has been bootstrapping for the past 5 years, which is not the smartest way to do things, but it was the only way I knew at the time. Is let me put together this, let me hustle this job, let me put together this to make things work. And if I invest in myself, then I will show other investors that the company is worthy of investing in as well. So when people ask like, okay, how much did you invest? Okay, you invest. You have a positive revenue stream. It's profitable at this moment. Even during COVID, we were able to survive. And now we're, going into December with one of our largest amount of people traveling on a tour. Is something to say, okay, we made it through the trenches. We weathered the storm, with COVID, and now we're ready to seek our first round of an investment. So I think I'm comfortable with where we're at. Yes, it's important to get investment money, but when you have investors investing in your company, you also lose some control. At this point, once you say, for instance, when you're still building the foundation of your company, an investor can ask for more because they're saying, okay, we see what you have in mind, but it's not there yet. And in order to get it to that point, we're going to need a larger percentage. At this point, I'm saying I've already invested in myself. The foundation is built. The foundation is firm, actually. So it's so firm that you can lay your investment on top of it. And you're going to get your return on your investment. So you can take less now because you don't have to invest in a foundation. It's a sturdy foundation. So I'm happy with making that organic. I don't know if I made a decision or a decision was made for me, but I'm excited for the organic growth of the company.
So, to conclude, how important is tourism to Black travellers? Well, it opens us to the wider world around us and gives countries a proper representation of us outside what is typically presented in their own media. So step out of your comfort zone, book that vacation and explore, whether it's a camel ride in Egypt or snowboarding in Lesotho. There's no better explanation than experience and great memories. This has been Kai for JCP, and if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, like and share. Also join our mailing list so that you'll be the first to be notified when we release a new video and future projects. See you next time!